Good afternoon, everyone. This is Joanne Stevens, and this is our Thursday call-in show for community owners and mobile home park industry participants. And today, our special guest for our show is Chad Greenlee of Iowa Realty Commercial, which is a division of Berkshire Hathaway, and Mark Borchardt, who is the regional manager for Stevens Homes and Communities. Our topic today is manager burnout, and it's an important topic that we need to have a higher awareness of. So I'll be introducing Mark and Chad here in just a minute, but before I do, I want to make a couple of announcements. November 1 to 3rd is the National Communities Council meeting in Chicago. And this is sponsored by the Manufactured Housing Institute. This is a not-to-be-missed event for park owners and really any industry participant. For more information about the National Communities Council Conference, you can go to my website, joannemstevens.com, and click on Save the Date, and you'll find a link to this event where it'll describe the speakers and just everything that's happening at that conference, and you'll be able to register from there. Or you can go to the Manufactured Housing Institute website. Also on the Joanne M. Stevens website are all of the newsletters, and so this month's newsletter is the theme of it is if Warren Buffett owned a mobile home park. And we did quite a bit of research here on some of the practices of the Berkshire Hathaway company. And as you know, Berkshire Hathaway owns Clayton Homes and 21st Mortgage. So they are in our industry, they're just not community owners. So I think you'll enjoy the newsletter for this month. If you want to have the newsletter mailed to you or emailed to you, just let us know. We'll be glad to do that. Also, we offer to do a market analysis at no charge for park owners, and it's confidential. You can either call to request that, or you can go to the website and request it. So without any further ado, I want to introduce our speakers today. Chad Greenlee is the regional manager for Iowa Realty in Eastern Iowa. And I wanted to have Chad on our show today because Chad has had an extensive background in human resources and leadership positions in business. And he has seen the gamut of working with all kinds of people in different situations. He has a background in his human resources background is important, for this topic. Also, he was in human resources during the financial crisis that began in 2008, which, as you'll see when we get into this topic, has had an impact on just business in general and hiring. Our other speaker is Mark Borchardt, who is the regional manager for Stevens Homes and Communities. Mark's background is in retail sales, where there's a tremendous amount of hiring that goes on and a lot of hours, but definitely correlations between retail and the property management or mobile home park business. So I wanted to start out by asking each of you, why are we seeing more in the public business publications about manager burnout? What is happening out there? Chad, I'll start with you. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I think really the biggest thing that we're seeing that now, it's not a new topic, but the balance, the work-life balance is so blurred. You're always connected. you're always, so to speak, working. But the interesting thing is, you know, I approached this topic with a former vendor of mine, and you see a lot of individuals wanting to get into management and not understanding what that is. They want the 8 to 5, and they want the work-life balance. And when I visited with him on this topic, he said, Chad, you know, those 8 to 5ers aren't the ones that we see in leadership anymore. It's a calling. And he's a religious fellow, but he said, you know, the biggest thing is to understand at night when you get that call at 10:30. That's the biggest blessing you could receive. And if you flip that, you understand what that means. So I think there's a big push for people to be in management positions and be in leadership positions, but not understanding that there's no such thing as balance. It's work-life. And that's probably the biggest thing, topic that we're seeing as we move into that.
That's an interesting comment, because I think that is something people think about a lot, that they want to have a job and a good job, but they also want the work-life balance so that when they leave work, that the work is at work. And what you're saying is that's not the case, and that's probably not going to be. We're in a new world.
Or in the new world, yes.
And Mark, I want to ask you from your point of view, since you did have leadership positions at large big box retailers, what you saw in the, you know, what is the topic, or why is this an important topic today?
Sure. Well, as I spent 30 years in retail management, and a lot of it was when I first started out, like in a store of 100,000 square feet, about 110 employees. There'd be a store manager, an assistant manager, and then maybe 5 or 6 department managers. And then as more automation came along, and sales got a little bit tighter, with online sales. So as far as sales within the store, you saw that eventually it reached a point where you basically had a store manager and an assistant manager, and this still would probably be in a store that's doing maybe $15 million a year in sales. So it got to be a lot more on the plates of those individuals that they had to oversee. And you would have like supervisors in the departments, but they weren't of the same skill level as a former department manager, so they weren't able to handle as much. So that's what I saw over the years. It just got to be the doing more with less philosophy that was needed to be successful within retail, but then it just put a higher demand, and like I said, if you were used to working maybe 45 hours a week, it got to be pretty common that an average week was 60 hours a week, just to make sure everything was getting taken care of and planned out properly, and a lot of between holidays, nights, and weekends, and your schedule's different all the time from week to week. All those things kind of add up too, as far as some of the demands of the job.
Yes, and I would say that translates into the mobile home park business. What I see from just my vantage point of being someone who lists and sells mobile home parks is that I know regional managers, either on-site managers or regional managers, we are having more consolidation in the mobile home park business, which means that there's fewer owners. People are buying more parks, and so they need a regional manager. And some of the regional managers that I have met, they have their phone with them 24/7, and the expectation is that if somebody has a question or needs an approval for a resident to move in, or a home sale, or whatever the case may be, the ownership of that property expects things to be happening pretty much 24/7. And the reason is the bottom line. They know that if they sell a mobile home and somebody moves into that mobile home, they've just added to their balance sheet about anywhere from $20 to $50 or even $60,000 by having a home occupied in that property. So I would say that there's fewer regional managers to handle an ever-growing number of parks and sites owned by some of the companies.
And to add on to both those points, when unemployment is so low for so long, like it has been, we have a tendency as executives or upper level management, when we have someone who's good and really reliable, when unemployment's low, it's hard to find good people when we have openings. And we tend to over-exercise and over-delegate our most critical tasks to our current employees or managers that are really, really good. And so we start creating a snowball within our own organizations of, you're really good, you asked for this challenge, and we're so quick to give delegated authorities that creates just an inherent burnout path, because we can't find people fast enough in this marketplace to hire for the positions that we need. We just, as Mark was saying, we do more with less, but we do it often to our most reliable and capable managers.
So for people listening today, I mean, you know, I've been reading more articles about burnout, and I have, you know, for a couple of years now. But if you're a manager, what should you be looking for either in yourself or in others, so you can be thinking about what you might, that there is a problem brewing? Chad, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, you really need to understand what it is your role as the manager, or, you know, sometimes we confuse management and leadership. And the way I look at it is, management is you're really reacting or taking care of the tasks that you're capable to do, but is that part of an overall leadership vision platform, so to speak? So you've got to understand what it is that you're doing. You know, what are my daily tasks? What do I need to accomplish? What am I uniquely qualified to do? Stick to there. Because when you start getting out of that, that's when you come into that Chicken Little, the sky is always falling, because there's thousands of things without focus. And I could definitely see as it has a big park, or, you know, multiple things where you're always on, if you're that single point of contact, how do you ever get out from the reactive tasks and the reactive things that are always going to go on?
Right.
Are you ever ahead of the game? And do you ever have a plan to get ahead of the game? You know, it's the old adage where, you know, all the houses are on fire, you know, on the street, but did you ever think to take the matches away from the 8-year-old that's walking in front of you?
Well, I like the sound of that. Yes, like, how do we wrestle the matches out of that kid? Mark, what do you think about that? Or what do you have to add to what Chad said?
Well, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, because that's part of that's, you know, one of the signs of burnout is like disengagement, and sometimes that is just going to come about where if you don't truly understand what your job consists of or what you're supposed to be doing, then you could easily, with all the things coming at you, could easily feel overwhelmed all of a sudden. So, you know, it's important that you're, you know, a good job description, and people know what you expect of them, so they know what they're supposed to be taking care of. And then also with that, you want to make sure there's consistency in the message you're giving to them too. So if you're having, you know, when you're visiting a park or a conference call, or however it is you follow up with your park managers, you want to make sure that your message is consistent as far as what your goals are each time. So there again, as a owner, you're going to have a plan in place, and and how you want to achieve that. You need to share that with your management staff so they also understand that. So everyone's working together for the same goal. Because if each time you come, you're giving a different message, then it just becomes confusing, and then they're not sure exactly what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I'd like to talk, if we could possibly talk about any examples. I'd like to talk about what's the difference maybe in somebody who's just burned out and stressed out, because I think stress is kind of a, I just hear people use the word stress a lot. And one of the things that, that I wanted to bring this topic up and do a call-in show on it is because we have a manager at Stevens Homes and Communities who has been just a top-notch manager for a lot of years, has done a great job. And recently he told me, well, he wants to, continue, working for the company, but he just doesn't want anything to do with the tenants or with the rent. And that's really the only, we have a system where we don't, we outsource a lot of the physical aspects of the property, such as cutting grass, snow, repairs to the streets, and so on. We don't really have a maintenance department per se. And I was a little taken aback, but I thought he's probably not the only one who just, after a time, you just can't, you feel like the next person who comes in the office and starts complaining about something, you're ready to throw in the towel. So what is the difference, do you think, between stress and burnout? Because I think one of the things that, stress gets a bad name, but really we need a certain amount of stress to give ourselves a little energy and impetus to get things done.
Yeah, this was an article I had found that had about stress and burnout kind of comparisons. So just kind of going through it quickly, like for stress is characterized by over-engagement, where burnout is characterized by disengagement.
Okay, so can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, so I would say, so stress part of it, so with over-engagement, you're probably, you realize there's a lot going on, so you're jumping, jumping in with both feet and doing everything, trying to jump in and make sure everything's being taken care of, and being really, you're feeling under stress, but there's so much going on, but you're achieving and getting things done. Where the disengagement part is you just reached a point where all these things need to get done, but you've kind of given up, or just maybe lost hope or something, where you're never going to quite get there. So now you've lost that sense of urgency. You're not really finding ways to get the job done.
Or sounds like the desire to get things done.
Right, the desire, you kind of lose, disengaged, you kind of lose the desire part of it, yes.
I think the communication path is the biggest. So an example would be, I had a manager, the response time, we were in sync, when we were trying to take a new office and build that office back up and recruit, and we had a plan. We had said, these are the things we're going to do. We were engaged in the community, going to community events, and the response time between her, or this individual, and myself was instantaneous. I'd shoot a text, make a phone call, within the hour we were back on the phone if I left a message. Pretty soon I started noticing that turned into, by the end of the day, and if I would have called, left a message on Monday or shot an email, it was Wednesday or Thursday before I was getting back, and there wasn't any substance there. I knew at that point that it was a total disengagement, and probably going to be one of those times where, man, are we on a path where we're not going to be able to do what we had set out to do. One of us is all in, the other one is not.
I think that's an important point, Chad, and let me ask you both, because I suppose when this burnout sets in, where people do feel hopeless, or I've even read people feel numb. They just don't feel any enthusiasm for the company or for the job or for the people that they work with. It's just sort of that malaise or blah feeling. And so people think, well, they start to think, well, the grass is greener. You know, maybe I'd be happier or better off to go to the other company, and probably that happens and they find out, geez, I'm just as unhappy at this company as I was at the other company. But there is a cost to business when you're losing good, you know, talented people, or good people that with some intervention or some, I don't know what would be the word that you would use. But so my question is, what is the cost to, I want to talk about what is the cost to business, and then we'll get into what are some solutions, if there even are any solutions. So what is the cost to the business?
Well, obviously one cost is that, you know, if you have a property manager who's been, you know, a lot of years of experience and knows that park, knows the residents, knows where all your water lines are, your sewer lines, how the mechanics work, knows all the day-to-day operations. If you lose someone like that, then you and then say even if they weren't, you know, showing signs of burnout, or they weren't as efficient as before, but if you're going to bring someone else new in, you know, they're going to have to spend time to learn all those things and kind of regain the residents' confidence and know, you know, anytime you step into a new job, the first year is always reactive because you're learning yourself, you know, and then until you get to that point where you can be proactive, because you know you can plan ahead knowing what's going to happen, and then so that can affect the bottom line too. You may have someone you think they're not doing the job as well as they used to, but if you can find a way to salvage that person, it's going to be better than bringing someone else new and basically having to start all over again on getting back to the level where they had achieved over those years.
Yeah, so hold that thought. We're going to talk about, you know, possible solutions to this. So Chad, tell us, in the situation that you were describing, how did things play out with this?
The cost of retention on a burnout can do two things. It can cost your culture, and it can prevent you from moving forward to doing things. So think of it this way: our day and age, we are so quick to hire because we need. And I don't say this lightly. This is an important thing to think about, but very, very slow to let go of individuals, because oftentimes when you do make that decision, both sides get relief and you're able to move forward. But you have to do it in a deliberate and a planned way. So when you do that, you're immediately able to move forward. So I did that, for instance, and I moved individuals around that were probably burnt out in their current positions, but once I understood them as individuals and what motivated individuals. It's important to know you inspire a group and you motivate an individual. So understand what they're really, really good at, and then you just shift the mindset, put them in. Maybe they're looking for a challenge that's bigger. Maybe they're in a small office. Maybe they're, in your case, managing a small park, and they say, I can do so much more. You're not taking advantage of me. I'm burnt out on this because it's boring. It doesn't satisfy me. What can I do to shift that and re-engage them and say, now you're a bigger piece of the puzzle. You feel more important. You're more engaged. And you're going forward. That's the change I did. Not that they have any more time than any of us, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Yep. But they split their mentality, and all of a sudden, the whole thing moves with the individual who, again, is now in charge of a much larger piece of the pie.
Yeah, so you're describing that just having this person, this individual, saying, well, there's a lot of opportunities at this company, this job, if I can really show my company that I'm capable, competent, and want to do more, that's a really good thing.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, and I'm sure Mark knows this, is that you prevent burnout by the engagement of your leadership. Yep. How, just this week, for instance, I've been at I manage 4 offices within, 30 to 40 miles of each other. Been at every single office, had discussions with every single manager, and visited with every single assistant manager. and the agents themselves. I have a good feeling of what is going on by Thursday of every single office, and if there's things that I need to address or things that I've heard that need to be addressed with the assistants or the managers themselves. Just by doing that, I can see who is being flexed or who has more on their plate that they can, I've got a whole list here right in front of me of things that we're all trying to tackle and do it together, and then we'll reconvene at our meeting next week. Wow.
So I want you to repeat that, Chad. So you said there's a lot that can be done to prevent burnout by
By engaged. So, you need to be in constant communication. Communication, decision-making can prevent burnout, or you can understand what is going on everybody's plates. Is it full or is it empty? Emptiness creates burnout because you just aren't being utilized.
Yeah.
That's the other thing that people don't realize is I can watch Netflix, 6 hours a day, but 2 hours a day I'm waiting for the phone to ring. Well, if you filled that up, they'd be much happier as well.
I think, and that kind of falls in line too, where we have our weekly conference call with our property managers, because that's what we always have a topic that we're working on as far as learning and developing. But we're also always asking. That's always our opportunity to let us know what challenges they're facing at their park, so we can help walk them through it, or see what resources we need to help provide them. So they're never going more than a week as far as where they can always call us at any given time, but everyone gets busy with different things. So this is a scheduled time, an event where they know they can bring things to the table that need attention, and we can discuss things. So I think that's, if parks aren't doing something like that with their, I think it could be, ours will go anywhere from a half hour to an hour depending on what's going on that week, but an hour out of your week to interact and engage, like Chad said, with your management team, and because that's where we kind of started to, even on this call, with the one manager, you could start to tell, just as we discussed some things, all of a sudden it was kind of like, all of a sudden you kind of tell he's becoming disengaged on some items that before were not really a problem, and all of a sudden didn't really. This person went from, you could ask him any question about this 300 unit park and he knew the answer about every single unit, to all of a sudden there was something, well, I don't know, I have to check on that, I don't know, and then it would still take a day or two to get back to you. So that's when you knew there was, those are the warning signs that there was some issues starting there.
So I think, just to recap what we've said so far, is that when you see that time lag, the manager who used to get back to you, or the employee that would get back to you ASAP, and now it's the end of the day, and then pretty soon it's the next day, or falling into the next day, and that is just uncharacteristic, and it's not a question that is just takes a ton of research necessarily. It's just so that's a warning sign, something to look into.
Absolutely.
And so one of the things that I'll just touch on here, because I've done a little reading and on this topic, but I think we're seeing more in the news that, as it relates to, and this falls into the workplace too, that people just feel alone, whether they're at work, that, especially if they're feeling burnout, that, well, I'm at this department, whether it's your own cubicle, or your own office, or your own property, or your own store, or whatever the case may be, that people generally are feeling alone. So that there's nobody they can really talk to about what they're experiencing. And so, the team building events, just having more get-togethers at the company, how do you make people feel like they're a part of something and that they're not alone?
That is a trick, because, as you move up in whatever position, ever role, the saying, it's lonely at the top. It truly is. I mean, you look at CEOs, you look at executive leadership, you have less and less of friends. But when you're a coworker in the trenches, your peers, your buddies, you're all rallying against, right? You have more camaraderie. So it gets tough, when you're a manager you're making the calls. When you're a leader, you're making the calls. And it's tough, you know, to you know, have a drink with somebody and then the next day you have to have a really difficult conversation. So that gets tough, but it doesn't mean that you don't have a team, and a team that you can rally around. But that's really dictated by leadership and culture on how that works. So it's a trick. There isn't a magic pill, but it is a fact that we have to face. So I don't know that I have a great answer for it, other than you do have to set the tone and the culture yourself if you're a manager or a leader of what that looks like and how that works in your environment. So,
I think that's right. As you were speaking, Chad, it reminded me of in the 80s when I got into this business. It seems like all of the real estate agents went out drinking a lot, and that seemed to solve a lot of community issues and just all kinds. We solved all of our problems, and you know, people tended to stay with the company. And I'm kidding, but you know, now there's just things that are just not as socially acceptable or culturally. You know, I don't think you know, Berkshire Hathaway wasn't investing in real estate companies back then, but. Anyway, any thoughts on that, Mark?
Well, like Chad said too, yeah, because as you work, you work your way up. Like I said, once you became like when I became like a store manager, you had to be a little more careful as far as what your relationship was. So like, even though there'd be a group of people going out, it's not that you would always say, no, I couldn't go out. I mean, we may stop by or something, you know, to have a drink with them or something. But you had to be very careful of that, because then if you're spending too much time with one group, then there's another group that then all of a sudden it's like, well, you know, as far as favoritism type things that come up, or having to, when it comes time to have to deal with that person, just makes it much tougher. But one way you could do it, as I was going around talking to like the employees in the store, you'd ask, you know, if they had kids, or if you'd always try to know a little bit about something about their family or their interests or things like that you could kind of interact and ask them questions about that. So that way you still kind of built camaraderie that way. You got to know a little bit more about them, and it kind of built team that way too, where you didn't necessarily have to go hang out with them, but yeah, you still learned about, you know, what makes them tick and what's important in their lives. So it's like Chad said, there's nothing in stone how to do it. It's just kind of finding your own style of how to interact with your team.
Yeah, and just one other quick topic is vacation time or downtime or days off, personal days off, holidays. You know, does it help with burnout if people have, you know, more vacation time, or, you know, if companies give more personal days off? Is that an answer? Do you have an opinion on that?
Well, I mean, that's obviously one of the things that does help with that, as far as, you know, finding time to relax, take time off, and then, but as I say those things, I'm probably the worst offender out there of not doing that. So I think, I mean, from what I've seen too, there's a lot of companies that offer a fair amount of time off, but if it's, especially in companies, you'll see where they can roll it over or carry it over. You'll see, I mean, there's people that'll have, you know, 300 hours of time off they just never take it because they're always.
Is that like a month or 2 months or?
That's about 6 weeks.
Yeah.
6 weeks.
Or that's probably more than that.
Yeah. So they have, because just for, I mean, I was thinking, well, there again, my wife's she's one of those people that has like 300 hours, but her company's done what they've done, so to try to counteract that, then to a point and say, okay, starting January 2018, you can only carry over this amount. So they had to basically find a way to make people use that time, because they were giving it to them, but then they weren't taking it. So.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, there's several companies that have gone to, you know, unlimited time off, and they're finding that people are taking less time off than when they had the 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
And so they mandate at least, if you have unlimited, you're taking at least 2 weeks. You know, I find it that you have to. You have to take a break.
Yeah.
I have a vacation coming up in November, and I haven't taken, more than a couple days off in the last 8 months.
Right.
And that's something to look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
That's a breather time. That's recharge. I come back and I'm gonna feel good heading into December and January when you're, all those resolutions and everything start clicking. You need that break. You just have to. And if you aren't doing that, you're doing a disservice to recharge your batteries.
Well, I want to thank our guests today, Mark Borchardt and Chad Greenlee. I think this is an important discussion of a topic that we need to address and be ever mindful of, and think of what the signs are and the solutions for ourselves and for employees. Next week, our guest is Eric Hansen of Appraisal Group. Eric appraises a lot of mobile home parks every year, and we are going to talk about what is happening with prices in today's heated up mobile home park sales. So that is a not to be missed topic. So thank you again to Mark and Chad, and this will be posted on YouTube a little later today. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you next week.